Hi, I'm Jill with the West Regional Branch of the Mobile Public Library, and today I'm going to do a little video about how to brew loose leaf tea. I, like most people around here, grew up drinking sweet tea, which we just made with Lipton or Louisiana tea bags, but one day I tried a strawberry kiwi hibiscus tea at a little tea shop that used to be on Old Shell Road close to McGregor, and I absolutely loved it. But eventually that tea shop closed, and I was determined I was going to figure out how to make some myself. And then when I was doing my research trying to figure out the recipe, I discovered that this particular tea was only available as a loose leaf tea. And I honestly was somewhat confused because, you know, if you go and look into it, there's all kinds of different advice from your tea experts, and it can be kind of overwhelming, and, you know, all kinds of different rules, and you do this, you do that, and at this temperature for this long, and yeah, like I said, I was a little bit lost. So I'm going to make this video and try to explain to you what I wish someone had explained to me when I was first trying to figure out how to make a pitcher of loose leaf tea. Okay, so what I am going to do today is I'm going to brew up a pitcher of strawberry kiwi hibiscus tea. It's my favorite herbal tea, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how you make a loose leaf tea. Now, when you start for any tea, you're going to need some water. You can cold brew a tea, which takes, you know, anywhere from maybe 6 hours to several days, depending on what tea it is and how strong you want it to taste. And a lot of people prefer cold brews because it doesn't release as many tannins, and it, you know, cold brews tend to be a little bit less bitter than a hot brew. So some people prefer the flavor of a cold brew. Of course, other people do prefer the flavor of a hot brew. But most people do brew hot tea because it is much faster. It's just, you know, a few minutes to have a cup, and a lot of people like to drink their tea hot. We don't very much here in the South, but worldwide, hot teas are probably more common. And even if you are planning to chill your tea, it is a lot easier to dissolve your sugar in the hot water than it is to try to add sweetener to a cold brew. So those are a few things to consider. Hot brewed tea is much more common than cold because it's faster to make, but you may want to try cold brewing your tea because, like I said, a lot of people do enjoy it that way. Okay, so this water I'm going to hot brew today. I am going to take this, I have 4 cups of water in this measuring cup, and I am going to put it in the microwave and heat it up that way. If I were at home, I would heat up my water in a tea kettle on the stove, but really you can heat up your water any way you want to. The only thing I would recommend against is using hot water from the tap, because the hot water in the tap can actually leach heavy metals from your pipes, so you do not want to drink it. Hot water is great for washing, but don't consume it. Okay, other than your hot water, you're going to need something to brew your tea in. I have a iced tea brewing pitcher. It has this basket attachment so that I can drop the tea into the water, and then when it's through brewing, pull it out and unscrew the attachment. If you don't need something like this. There are all kinds of devices that you can use to brew loose leaf tea, and you can even just use a simple strainer. And of course, you're going to need tea. This is the strawberry hibiscus. It's also got apple pieces and rose hips and, you know, an assortment of other things in the mixture. That's going to make a very nice, you know, citrusy, fruity kind of tea. And if you want your tea sweet, have some sort of sweetener. This is just regular cane sugar. But you can feel free to leave that part out or swap it out for any kind of sweetener you like. So now I am going to go heat up this water, and I will be back in just a minute. Okay, so I just got this hot water out of the microwave, and it is very hot. I am going to let that cool off for just a second while I get my pitcher ready. Tea experts will give you different temperature ranges for different types of tea, and if you want to make the absolute perfect cup of tea, you want to hit that temperature range. However, if you're not that much of a tea connoisseur, which honestly I'm not, you probably won't taste the difference. I usually can't. The only thing I would caution against is make sure not to put your tea leaves in boiling water, because if that water is way too hot, you can kind of like burn your tea leaves, and it releases too much bitterness, so you don't want to do this. So I'm going to put about roughly 1/3 of a cup into this strainer, and it doesn't need to be that precise, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And it needs a little bit more. Yeah, that looks about right. So I got about 1/3 of a cup of tea leaves in my little strainer. If I did not have this brewing pitcher and I was going to use one of these, what I'd do is I would dump this directly into the hot water, and then once it was through brewing, I would pour it through the strainer into the pitcher just to get the tea leaves out. You can basically use anything you have that will get the tea leaves out after they've been dunked in water. Will work. You can actually, technically speaking, you don't even have to get the tea leaves out of the water later. That's how the reading tea leaves works. You drink your tea with the leaves still down in the bottom of the cup, and then they look at the patterns the leaves make in the bottom of the cup after you finish drinking the tea. But personally, I do not want to drink any kind of gritty tea. And now I am putting about 2/3 of a cup of sugar in the bottom of my pitcher. That's just personal preference. My brother doesn't put any sugar in his tea at all, but I think unsweet tea is kind of gross. So I said, just do what makes you happy on that. And you may just have to do some trial and error to see what works for you. Okay, this has probably sat long enough. I know it's not boiling. I'm sure it's going to be fine. So I'll just pour this in on the sugar. And I'm going to give this a stir, make sure all this sugar is nice and dissolved in the hot water. And then I'll put my tea leaves in. Okay, now I've just got to let this steep. Steep is just like the tea brewing term for the amount of time that you let the flavors from the leaves infuse in the water. Different teas have different steep times. This is a hibiscus tea, and hibiscus teas are usually pretty forgiving. I usually steep this for about 15 minutes, but honestly, if I let it go over that, like maybe I forget I'm steeping it and let it sit for several hours, it's perfectly fine. It might get a little bit stronger after a few hours, but it won't go bitter. If you're steeping, say, a black tea, you want to really watch the minutes, because the difference, just a couple minutes more on the steep time can make your tea very astringent and bitter tasting. You will usually find some suggestion of a steep time on the package, and I think I forgot to mention this, but you'll also find a suggestion for the amount of tea to use per cup on the package of the tea. But that, for both the amount of tea and the steep time, those are usually just sort of a suggestion. It's a jumping off place. The 1/3 cup of leaves for a half gallon is a bit more than suggested. This particular tea suggests about a 1/4 cup of leaves per gallon, and I increased it to 1/3 of a cup because I like mine more strongly flavored. And the same thing with the steep time. It suggested 8 to 9 minutes, but I've gone up to 15. However, if I were making a black tea, I probably would still increase the amount of leaves, but I would not increase the steep time greatly because it would more than likely go bitter. So while I'm waiting for this to steep, let me tell you a little bit about herbal teas. The first thing I want to tell you about herbal teas is that many people would argue that they are not teas at all. All of your other teas, your black tea, green tea, oolong, white tea, those are all made with the same plant, the Camellia sinensis, which is also commonly known as the tea plant, which is where we get the word tea, is because of the plant it is made out of. Herbal teas, on the other hand, are not made with the tea plant. So some people would say that they should be called tisanes. However, since they are made with in the same method as tea is, it has gotten to be common use to call them herbal teas. So if these are not made from a tea plant, what are they? Well, herbal teas can be made from any type of edible plant. Some common herbal tea bases are hibiscus, which is what this is. Rooibos is another very common one. I think rooibos is probably the one that's most similar to a regular tea, except for unlike a real tea, herbal teas are not caffeinated. So a lot of people like that as a decaf alternative to normal tea. You can also find things like chamomile, lavender, licorice root, calendula. I mean, the possibilities are endless because, like I said, they are made from basically any edible plant, and a lot of herbal teas are blended, just like this one is, where the base is hibiscus flowers, but it also has a lot of dried fruits and other ingredients to give it a very rich, fruity flavor. And I will offer one word of caution about herbal teas, is there is a lot of information out there that attributes a lot of health claims to herbal teas. I would take those claims with a grain of salt. A lot of them are overblown, if not entirely made up. For any kind of health concern, consult a medical professional, talk to your doctor. You don't want to try to self-treat with herbal teas based on marketing claims. And I think that's pretty much all I have to share about herbal teas. If you have any questions, leave me a comment in the box below this video. And I will just let this finish steeping, and I'll be back in a few minutes. It's been a little bit more than 15 minutes, so this is basically ready to go. So now all I'm going to do is take these tea leaves out. Oh, that does smell really good. Very fruity, strawberry. Now, be careful with this. The hibiscus can stain. Okay. Then I'm going to fill this up the rest of the way with ice water. Reserve a few cubes for my glass. Close this up really well to make sure I don't get any leaks. And then I'm going to give it a good shake. Get all that ice to cool off that hot water. This is why I like these iced tea brewing pitchers. You can cool it off and drink it immediately. If you don't have something that seals tight like this, you might cool off that top layer where the ice is floating, but it won't cool off the whole beverage at one time. It's just got to sit in the fridge. Anyway, so pour myself a glass and do a little taste test. It's good. It's like tart and sweet and fruity with just a hint of a floral flavor from the rose hips. Hibiscus, even though they're flowers, they actually taste very tart, almost citrusy. So if it weren't for the rose hips, I would think this was some sort of fruit juice. Anyway, that's light and refreshing. It's like perfect for summertime. So I hope this kind of showed you how easy it is to brew loose leaf tea. It's pretty much the same as brewing a bag tea, except for you've got a lot more options and a lot more ways to customize your brew specifically to your tastes. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.